We did want to wrap things up, though, with some folks who represent us through our state and local government, and hear from them about what are the initiatives being taken that we can be a part of, that we can support, that we can promote through our governmental structures, because of course on a federal level it's been very frustrating for all of us, but we need to recognize that that's not where everything always happens on the federal level, and there's some very, very exciting things that are happening here in the city of Denver and in the state of Colorado. I don't know how many of you were in Senator Hoag's session just now about effective advocacy, but he was very energizing. And I also went to the earlier session on Colorado legislation, and that was good as well, to learn about what we've done so far and what our prospects are for the future. So I'm Nelson Bach, by the way. I'm a member of the board of Colorado Interfaith Power and Light. I've been involved with COIPL since 2007, when we did our first big campaign, which is this little booklet called Change the Light, Change the World, that is in your packet. And I'll just brag a little bit that I had a lot to do with writing this particular booklet, and I was very proud of it. And we had 100 congregations that participated in this program, and about 10,000 of their members of those 100 congregations that participate. So that's how many compact fluorescent light bulbs we gave out to people who participated back in 2007. And as I said, I'm now a member of the board of directors. And we're very, very excited that we have Reverend Elias Burgos as our director right now, and he did a fantastic job of putting together this conference in a relatively short time, and the workshops have been great, the speakers. So anyway, right now, we were hoping to have Representative Crisanta Duran, who's a state representative in the state legislature, and she was confirmed to be here, but we don't know what happened to her, so maybe we'll just all say a little prayer for her and hope that it wasn't something serious. We know how that things do come up. I actually was late for the session today because I had a family obligation that I had forgotten about, and I'd rather have Elias be annoyed at me than another person. So anyway, with us right now is Jerry Tinianow. I've learned how to pronounce his name, I think. Tinianow.
There you go.
Tinianow. I got it wrong the first time. I do know how to pronounce it. Tinianow, who is Denver's very first chief sustainability officer, and he began on July 30th of 2012, and is directing the Denver Sustainability Advisory Committee, which is a citizens advisory committee. That's part of one part of his job. He's got a lot of part of his job. But I was at that meeting yesterday of that Sustainability Advisory Committee. It was really exciting. He's got a bunch of people on his hands who are just chomping at the bit, or to mix metaphors, ready to take the bull by the horns. And they've decided they don't want to be an advisory committee, they're going to be an action committee. So you might have a little more than you bargained for when you first put that group together. Anyway, prior to joining Mayor Hancock's administration, he was director of the Center for Energy and Environment at the Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission. And during law school, clerked for the Sierra Club Legal Defense Fund, and also has worked for the National Audubon Society. Jerry, I just have to tell you, we are so fortunate and privileged to have someone like Jerry, who came out here all the way from Ohio, although I think a lot of us came out here from that direction, didn't we? We can certainly understand it. But we're really excited to have him in this position, and want to invite him to spend maybe about 10 minutes or so sharing his perspective on where the city of Denver is and where he thinks we're headed, and hopes to see us headed, in terms of sustainability, and particularly related to energy and climate change, since energy is kind of a major component of the climate change issue. So Jerry, thank you so much for being with us today, and we look forward to your remarks. Yeah, I think it might be.
Not even sure. Let me just try this.
Try that.
Can you all hear me? If I just speak at this level?
He needs to hear you.
Why don't you swap mics?
The button on the left. Press
The lavalier?
Oh, okay. There you go.
How's this? Can you hear me now? Still can't? How about there? There we go. Okay. Great. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you for coming out today in the middle of a holiday weekend on a very important cause. My objective today is to acquaint you with Denver's new approach to sustainability, particularly how it applies to energy, so you can align your own efforts. So if you understand what we're doing and why we're doing it, then you can align your efforts with our own. And I wanted to start with the question of why address these issues, energy and climate, at the level of a city. Because let's face it, we're all used to the federal government being the place that you take these issues. I worked on Capitol Hill when I went to college and law school in the 70s. I actually wrote solar energy legislation in 1977. That provided low-interest loans for rural communities for solar. It was a great program. President Reagan zeroed it out in 1981. That was the last we heard of it for about 30 years. But things have changed a lot in Washington, and I understand that energy is an international market, and climate change is definitely an international issue. But the fact is, right now, the federal government simply isn't functioning in a dependable fashion. I went out to the airport last night. My wife spent the last few days at the annual conference of the National Association for Interpretation out in Reno, and picking her up, waiting for the luggage, it occurred to me that Congress is sort of like a luggage carol out at the airport. It kind of goes around and around, but nothing ever comes out. And so, the focus has shifted to cities, because cities are where you can get things done. Thomas Friedman wrote an article in the New York Times last summer under the headline, "I Want to Be a Mayor." Because yes, we're only operating at the city level, but we can really get things done at the city level. And cities really have to take a big stake in the issues relating to energy and climate change, because we are the first responders. FEMA comes along later. But when we have a problem, when there's a catastrophic weather event, as we had recently, people turn to their cities first. We're the ones they're going to look to. So we have a major stake in being big players in this area. And also, at the municipal level, people like you have more influence than at any other level of government. I really enjoyed Senator Hope's presentation, and he talked about how much easier it is to get to talk directly to a legislator at the state level, even more so at the city level. When the mayor gets letters and communications about sustainability issues, he refers them over to my office for response. And I got to tell you, in the 15 months I've lived here, I probably drafted a dozen letters. What that means is the opportunity for you to have your voice heard on these issues is greater at the city than at any other level of government. And the city is equipped to move in a way that the federal government and even the state government really isn't right now. And then one final reason that I think cities are important, and that's because of the city-state. City-state's not a term that you hear people use very often, and you may say to yourself, well, Jerry, are you talking about Athens, Sparta? No, I'm not. Actually, I'm talking about something much earlier than that. I'm talking about Jericho, which there's evidence of settlement at Jericho 6,000 years ago. I'm talking about Ur of the Chaldees, Ur, where Abraham came from. The city-state is the oldest form of human organization after the tribe. Nation-states come and go, but the city-states have always been here and always will be here. And they always take the same basic form, as there's a central city, And then there's an area called, you may have heard the term the hinterland. Sometimes the term the hinterland has negative consequences, but it really doesn't. The city-state is always an exchange between the people who live inside the walls and the people who live outside the walls, and they both need each other. And it's the continued cooperation between the two of them that allows for the success of the city-state. And city-states interact with each other through trade, but they also compete with each other. And that's as true today as it was back in the time of Jericho. Last Tuesday night, I spent about an hour and a half on the phone with my counterpart in the city of Shenzhen in China, talking about collaboration through the State Department's Eco-Partnership Program on the electrification of our transportation system, and then supplying that electrified transportation system with renewable power. I have to tell you, Shenzhen, a city of 14 million, by the way, you probably never heard of it, but it's 14 million, and 30 years ago it was about 300,000, so you can imagine what's happened there. They're ahead of Denver in these issues, and we have a lot to learn from them. But that's what happens now. The city-states interact with each other, and I think that's, whatever happens at the national level, that's going to continue. We do have to recognize the limitations of what a city can do, because energy is an international market, and one primary thing that the city can't control is the price of energy. When we talk about educating segments of the public to do the right thing, the most powerful educator that I've ever met is someone I call Dr. Price. People pay attention to Dr. Price. And they make decisions and they act probably more quickly than anything else. But unfortunately, cities don't control the price. Yes, in theory, assuming in Colorado where we have Tabor, the people would vote for this, we could have a citywide carbon tax. But it's too easy to just go across the border to Arvada or wherever to evade something like that. We just don't have the control over the price. And we also have to recognize that the current centralized power system, the centralized energy system, which has grown up in this country and here in Colorado over a period of 100 years, there's always a certain amount of inertia that's built into the scope of investment that's involved in our current power system. That's not to say that things can't change, but you have to recognize that. For years, the power company, when I first started in this movement, the energy companies were the bad guys. Their solution to everything was build a coal-fired power plant. But in dealing with energy companies, I found they're not inherently evil. They do what the system tells them to do. And for the first half of my career in environmental activism, the system told them, if you want to make money, you build a power plant. So that's what they did. But lately, the rules have been changing. And as soon as the rules change, you see them respond. And you see Xcel Energy doing things in the area of energy efficiency, solar, wind, that an energy company 10, 15 years ago never would have done. They're not doing enough, but the rules have changed and they do respond. But we have to recognize that there's a certain amount of inertia built in to the current centralized power system that will have to be overcome. I want to say a few words about Sustainability Denver's Way, because we've changed it since I came in. The predecessor program was called Greenprint Denver, and you may have heard of it. Mayor Hickenlooper started it. Greenprint was sort of a collection of projects to demonstrate to the public what was possible. But Mayor Hancock, when he was elected in 2011, wanted to take a different way. He wanted a sustainability program that extended broadly to all of the different subjects that could be the subject of sustainability, all the different resource groups. For example, Greenprint never dealt with food. Greenprint didn't deal with the workforce. To me, you can't really have an economy without people. And so how you care for those people makes a difference. In health. The health of the people, Greenprint really didn't deal with health except as an outcome. We view it as a resource. And so the mayor wanted to be broad, he wanted to be deep, and he wanted to take everything to scale. And our energy goal kind of illustrates that in a nutshell. Our community energy goal, we adopted energy goals in 2020. And our energy goal for the community for 2020 is that by 2020 in Denver, we're using the same amount of energy for all purposes, not just electricity and gas, but also mobility, liquid fuels, that we are keeping that steady, using the same amount that we used in 2012, and we are producing half of that with renewable energy. So that is our goal for 2020. Thanks. And that's a big number. Now, when people hear you're not going to try and cut energy use, you're just going to try and keep it the same, keep in mind that our city is currently growing at about 2.5%, 2.4% per year. And when I talk about scale, and this is kind of the major point I want to leave you with, Denver operated what to all appearances was a very successful suite of programs. You may have heard of them, the Denver Energy Challenge, which was advice to residents and businesses and assistance with fine-tuning the energy efficiency in their homes, and also Certifiably Green Denver, which focused on specific components of our business community. And I went to a presentation by the agency that operated that program, which was an award-winning program, by the way. They came in under budget, they hit all of their numbers, they finished 3 months ahead of time. And he said, you know, in the course of those two programs, we have saved enough energy to power Red Rocks Amphitheater for 55 years. And that's a huge number, he said, that's a huge number. But I have to tell you, I was sitting there thinking that that's a tiny number. It's not a criticism, by the way, of them, but if you imagine yourself floating in space looking down on Denver and looking at every building and every industrial operation and all the vehicles that are moving around, and then you say, okay, I have a program, I'm going to flick a switch, and I just turned off Red Rocks. But everything else is going forward as before, and we're going to take on, between now and 2020, about 15% more people. Then you get a sense of what I'm talking about, the scale that we need to operate at. We need to find the switch that turns off 15% of what's going on down there, and not just Red Rocks. And that's what scale's all about, and that is frightening. That is scary, because the program they operated, there wasn't any problem with the program. They did exactly what they were told to do, and they did it in a marvelous fashion. The problem isn't with how they operated the program. The problem is with what they were asked to do in the first place. And Mayor Hancock, you know, his marching orders to me were, we have to move big numbers, and we cannot simply continue in a linear fashion by simply saying, well, we'll just do what we've been doing, but do more of it. Especially with, you know, the federal funding being cut off. That program I just mentioned got a big ERA grant, a stimulus grant. That money disappeared. So business as usual, or a kind of a gradual expansion of business as usual, is not going to work. What I think change will look like between now and then, and I'm convinced we can meet these numbers, but 4 components that we'll be emphasizing is, number one, I think we will be focusing a lot on our commercial buildings, because that's really where the gold is. You know, Denver was founded because of the discovery of gold. It was a mining community. That gold that's up in their hills, that played out, but now there's gold in our commercial buildings. That's where the opportunities are to really change things, and it's a win-win situation. I mean, we have the technology, we know what behaviors are needed, we can make the numbers work. Right now it's largely a market and regulatory problem, and we have to look for major savings, primarily in commercial. We could continue with our residential program, but when I ran the numbers for the group that had done the previous program, and I said, you know, you guys had 6,000 consumer contacts, 2,000 homes that you did, 15% savings on average in those homes. How many homes would we have to put through that program to make a proportionate contribution to our 2020 goal, you know, proportionate to what residential buildings are? The answer was 90,000 homes. So after doing 2,000 in 3 years, we'd have to do 90,000 between now and 2020. That's not to say that we won't continue to find more and more ways to increase energy efficiency in residential, but we have to go for where the biggest chunks of energy are and the greatest opportunity. And in this community, that's commercial buildings. Number two, I'm very confident, you know, renewables are doing real well in this community, as they should. There are times during the day right now when 50% of the electricity we're using in Denver is produced by wind. And solar, you know, is expanding. I believe the energy companies are on track to hit their 30% number by 2020, but remember our number is 50%. And what those energy companies don't deal with, that we need to deal with, are the liquid fuels. So we're going to be putting a big emphasis on switching to renewable fuels with a major emphasis on algae. I could give a whole lecture on algae and why I think that's the fuel of the future for Denver, particularly with our heavy dependence on our airport. But suffice it to say, that's another example where we can't just, I mean, we're going to continue with the solar and wind, but we need to add some new things to that suite. And I suspect that algae is probably going to be a big component by 2020. We need to multitask. We designed our 2020 goals so that if you're working on one, you're working on many. For example, our mobility goal, which is to reduce travel in single occupancy vehicles down to 60% from where it is right now, about 72. If we succeed in doing that, we'll also be producing an energy result, we'll also be producing an air quality result, and we'll also be producing a greenhouse gas result. And if you look through our goals, they are designed to be synergistic. It's easier to meet these goals if you can work on several of them with the same project. And finally, I did mention algae, again, topic for another day, maybe the next conference. But we're paying a lot of attention to it. It's a virtually carbon neutral fuel with many positive attributes, including, among other things, it will not compete with our food system, the way corn-based ethanol competes with our food system. In fact, in a pinch, you could convert an algae system to a food system in about 3 days. The technology for converting algae into gasoline is essentially the same technology we use with oil. Oil is just algae from 60 million years ago. So we're just trying to cut out the chronological middleman. So I'm going to rest there because apparently I think we may have a second speaker now. And I think there'll be time for questions, right?
So actually,
Okay.
Representative Duran called a few minutes ago, and she was given apparently some bad information by an assistant. At least that's the message we got, and she was told that the panel was going to be at 5:30 instead of 4:30, and so she expresses her deep apologies.
I can talk longer if you want.
For missing. Yeah, no, I think that Jerry, I think that's a really good place for you to end. Thank you, and I'm sure that there are a lot of people who have want to hear more. Yeah.
Can you talk about the green compost program? My neighborhood is in the test market area, and it's very heavily utilized.
She wanted to know a little bit more about our green compost program, and I should take this as an opportunity to point out that right behind you, Alicia Anderson is sitting back there. She's one of our interns, and she's been doing a lot of work on materials. When I came in, by the way, we had a program called Waste Management, and I changed it to Materials Management because we want to take a life cycle view. Diversion's important, but a lot of the decisions you make where you don't buy something to begin with also can contribute to that. Denver has been piloting a composting program and slowly rolling it out to various neighborhoods. This year, I believe about 6 more neighborhoods are going to be added. But this is another area where we can't simply continue at that linear place. Our materials goal for 2020 is to reduce the amount of waste going to landfills from Denver by 20%. Most of our goals, there's no silver bullet, there's no single thing you can do, but in Denver, there actually is a silver bullet on this if we choose to fire it, and that is that 58% of our residential waste now is compostable. It's one of the highest percentages of any place in the country. And I just saw it this weekend in my dumpster. You know, I went out to put some garbage in the dumpster, and it was full of leaves and compostables. And you see everyone, I mean, you've all seen this. Any of you in a neighborhood with dumpsters, you've seen this. So residential is about half of our waste stream, 58% of half is 29%, and we only need to reduce our waste by 20% to meet that 2020 goal. And composting has a lot of other benefits as well. So our Department of Public Works, although they're working slowly to roll this out, they've gotten marching orders from the mayor that we have to accelerate, progress on the master plan for solid waste beyond that. And the good news is, the numbers we have, because we have so much that could be composted that's not going there right now, that's really a fairly, short route that could get us to our number and maybe beyond our number by 2020.
That's really good news to me. Our household was one of the very first that got those green composting barrels, and after the second year, they've got a notice from the city that it was going to be discontinued because the initial funding had run out. But there was such an uproar among people who were participating in that program that the city came back and said, well, if you're willing to pay $100 a year for this service, then we'll continue it. And they've got a waiting list of people who are more than willing to pay $100 a year for that service. So that's good news.
Yeah, when we were our first year in Denver, we bagged everything and took it to the drop-off. But between the cost, we had to rent a pickup truck to do that, and now we're composting on site, which really makes it easy. You don't even need one of those barrels, and that's part of the techniques. We can roll it out to individuals, but there's also ways to do it right on your home site.
Oh,
I
sorry.
just had a question of what the limitation was when I see how high the compliance is in my neighborhood. And the people share their bins if you have some space
Right.
left, and it seems to me like such a no-brainer.
Yeah, it is.
Expand it quickly.
Well, it's not a lack of brains, it's a lack of money. It's a no money here. Yeah, and then the problem we have in a lot of neighborhoods in Denver is these shared dumpsters. Because that really makes it difficult to encourage people to recycle. And so we've got to replace the dumpsters with individual baskets at individual homes. And we also need to look for other solutions that might skew the economics. I met a couple of weeks ago with a company that claims to have developed a system to create biofuel from compostable waste. It does have a byproduct which can then be sent to regular composting, but we're very interested in that because the economics of waste to energy might be the way that unlocks the dollars we need to accelerate this.
Yeah, Dave.
Are there efforts underway for commercial scale food waste recycling? Our church is a feeding site for over 1,000 people every Monday for the last 5 years. I and another fellow deal with the cardboard and cans out the back of the church. But we're throwing away large amounts of food and waste, salads, food chopped up and so on. Are there efforts underway that churches like ours can participate along with restaurants? Any kind of comprehensive thinking through how that might be another step?
I think so, but I don't think we're quite as close to that. Keep in mind that the way waste is handled in Denver is that the city handles residential waste and smaller multifamily, but everything larger than, I think about 8 units, and any commercial or industrial, which would include the church, is not handled by the city. So we would certainly be interested in doing that. It'll be a question of economics, but we will probably focus first on what we do control right now, which is the residential component. Hopefully, if we have a really vibrant residential program, it'll be easy for us to offer it to churches and businesses to just kind of jump on board of that.
There are a couple private companies, I think, that will, do they charge, or I know Waste Farmers, and I think also Alpine, Waste Management, Alpine is their name. I think both of them have composting programs for commercial. And if you have a regular schedule that you can set up with them where they'll come and collect that stuff. Yes.
So how does it work? I don't live in Denver, so how does it work? You have separate trucks come through to fix it up, and what do they do?
Yeah, you have, for our recycling barrels are purple, but if you're in an area that has composting and you choose to participate, there's a separate green barrel. And you put it in there, and a truck comes around and picks it up. I don't personally know what happens beyond the pickup. Part of the problem with being a sustainability director is we have 12 different resource groups, and so I know, I'm like the Platte River, like a mile wide and an inch deep or whatever. So there's a limit to how much I know. But For anything I'm talking about, I'll stick around afterwards, and if people want more detailed information, I can give you my card. You can send me your question, and then I can forward it to the people who will know the details of what you're interested in.
I believe the city contracts with A1 Recycling, which has a compost facility up in up northeast Denver, about 30 miles, and they have a commercial compost facility there. So it gets picked up by a separate special truck, and then it gets delivered out to that company. Yeah. Is it a follow-up?
Yeah, sort of. I'm just gonna see if we work with other cities, like with the Canada trucks in town and other things as well.
We do that a little bit. We need to do it a lot more. One of the concepts that I've brought to the office is, which I was surprised coming from Ohio, when you look at Denver, in so many ways it's so much more sophisticated, but there's very little talk out here about ecosystem services. It's not a concept that's gotten a lot of play. And which is interesting because all cities, going back to the city-states, including and Jericho, they all relied on ecosystem services. But in Colorado, the ecosystems that provide our services in many cases are on the other side of the divide because of the way our water system works. And they're shared with other communities. So we have a big stake in getting together with all the surrounding communities to study, make sure everyone knows what are the ecosystems that we're relying on for these services, and then working together to support that. I think what may actually bring us together, what may jumpstart these regional efforts, is the appearance of the emerald ash borer up in Boulder. Because that's here now. Whether that's an isolated instance or just the beginning wedge, we don't know. But there's no way to address that issue on a city-by-city basis. The emerald ash borer, which is a little insect that's been in the east, it hadn't been seen west of Kansas City until a few months ago. But now it's in Boulder, and I'm very familiar with that pest coming from Ohio, and I will tell you, we've estimated if it really reaches full-fledged, epidemic in Denver, it could take out about 300,000 of our ash trees.
And until recently, ash trees were a preferred, tree for residents to plant, right?
That's right. Yeah, that's how we got from a handful of trees when the miners showed up in 1859 to over 2 million just in Denver today.
I'm going to get back to energy and ask a question. What do you think about what's going on in Boulder with XL Energy and tell us about that in terms of leveraging, more renewables and.
Well, XL, as most of you probably know, is exploring the possibility, maybe even pursuing the possibility of making its electric system municipal.
Boulder is.
Boulder, I'm sorry, yeah.
Boulder is.
That's right, Boulder is. And it's interesting to me, again, coming from outside, because we have a lot of municipal systems in Ohio. The national headquarters of the Association of Municipal Power Companies is in Ohio. But in Ohio, and personally in my law practice, we actually would begin to organize municipalization, but not for the reason that Boulder's doing it. We would do it because you could get leverage on the utility company. If you even threatened to form a municipal system, then they could change the rates that they charged your city because they were meeting competition. It's a regulated industry. This is one of the first instances that I'm aware of where it's being used as a tool to green up the sources of electricity in the community. So we're watching it with interest. Boulder would have to actually create an electric utility, you have to purchase the assets. You don't necessarily need generating assets, but you do need the transmission system. And our transmission system within Denver is obviously much, much more expensive than the system that supplies Boulder. But our franchise agreement with Excel doesn't come up for renewal again until 2026. But it has some really broad data sharing, renewable and energy efficiency provisions, which the city until recently hasn't really done much with. And we're now talking with our Public Works Department, which is the agency that manages the relationship with Excel. We're talking with them about really ramping up, taking advantage of these provisions that are already in our franchise agreement to see how far we can take them. I mean, why pass new laws when we may already have something in our franchise agreement that allows us to go much further than has been the case in the past?
Elias?
Would have been for us, the power line would have been encouraging churches to get solar energy. If you can mention that from your perspective, how do you see that?
Can you repeat the question?
The question is that Interfaith Power and Light is you said churches, but I'm going to say communities of faith, encouraging communities of faith to put solar on their facilities. And certainly if it makes financial sense to do so, and it usually does, we would certainly suggest to communities of faith that they do so. Keep in mind that there's really 3 or maybe 4 different models that are out there. One is obviously directly placing it on the church and net metering so that the utility company pays you for the power you're producing. Wouldn't advise anyone to do that unless it's coupled with a major effort to make the church building energy efficient. You never want to, you always want to do the 2 at the same time. Another option is the power purchase agreement where, in effect, you lease your roof or your grounds or both out to a company that will own the units, that will install them there at no cost to your church, and that will give you a credit against your utility bill, and will lock in a low electric rate for you, for a long period of time. And then there's a new model, Community Energy Collaborative, I think it's called. There's a group that put a big solar installation on the roof of Hangar 2 at Lowry. It's the first community-owned solar. That differs from a power purchase agreement in that you can essentially buy for yourself or for your business or for your church as an investment some of the solar panels that are up there. You purchase the solar panel, you own it. You get a credit against your utility bill for the amount of energy that's being produced by your solar cells. And by the way, what's different from a power purchase agreement is you can actually transfer your rights under that, coming from those solar cells, to any electric utility bill in Denver. So if it turns out, you are actually it's producing more electricity than you use at the church, you can actually sell it to someone who has a bigger, footprint. And you own it, and they maintain it for at least 20 years. And it pays, in terms of the rate of return, I've looked at the numbers, and you earn about a 6% return. Which isn't bad. I mean, you're certainly not going to get that on your money market account or even your CDs that your church has. So there's a lot of different options on that, and I would encourage communities of faith to explore all of them and kind of compare them and decide what makes the best sense for your own community.
I don't know whether this is strictly proper or appropriate, but another member of our board of directors, Larry Grimm, does consulting with congregations to sort through all of those various options as far as the ownership and that. And Larry is right here, so if any of you have congregations that are interested in talking, they'll walk you through from beginning to end. Just because it can be a very daunting process for a congregation.
Right. Each of these methods that I talked about, they each have their own benefits and also their own risks. They are not without risk. And so it's important to weigh them and also decide how much tolerance your congregation has for risk. But certainly it's something that you should consider. It's one of the most direct things you can do to address climate change.
I can take 1 or 2 more questions depending how.
But I'll stick around. So.
I have a question about the plastic bag situation.
Yeah.
I was disappointed because when Denver didn't follow through with that because I had hoped then that it would spread out, to the metropolitan area. So do you see that coming back anytime soon?
Yes, it actually is going to come back to City Council on December the 9th. And the mayor has been discussing an alternate approach with Councilwoman Ortega The mayor believes that providing plastic bags is an option for stores, that it's not, they don't have to do it. There are stores out there like Whole Foods and Vitamin Cottage that are doing quite well without giving out plastic bags. And the mayor believes that since this is an option for the store, if you choose to give them out, then you need to expect to contribute to the problems that they cause. And the mayor would actually like to see plastic bags eliminated within 3 years, but there's a lot of constraints that we have here in Colorado. We have Tabor, which basically says any legislation involving a fee immediately goes to court. We also have another statute, which you may not be familiar with in Colorado, that seems to say that no city can enact a bag ban, which is available in other states and cities, but it's not apparently available in Colorado. That's kind of an ambiguous statute. But the mayor is committed to working with Councilwoman Ortega. I don't want to say, because we haven't reached a final agreement yet, but we think we're going to come back with something positive by the 9th of December. And we really need to address the bigger picture of solid waste generally. The plastic bags are a very, very small part of the waste stream, but they're a very visible part of the waste stream. And so people notice them in a way that they don't notice other components. I was talking to a company recently that's created a system to compost and recycle baby disposable diapers. Disposable diapers are about 4 times the portion of the waste stream than plastic bags. But because people tend to throw them out and they don't blow around out there in the wind, we don't see them as much. But yeah, it is coming back to council on December 9th, and I think there will be some new developments on that.
Was there one over here? Yes.
I want to know if there's any, how can your average Denver citizen help support the goal?
We're actually developing a program for 2014, which we call the 5 Asks. So there will be a list of 5 specific actions that you'll see over and over again in city publications. We're still working on them, but my guess is there'll be an energy ask, energy ask, a water ask, a materials ask, a transportation ask, and a food ask, one in each of those areas. But what the individual citizen does is really, there's no one-size-fits-all solution because everyone's circumstances are different. So we want to make sure that citizens have a sort of a menu of things that they could do so that they can choose the things that are most obvious or work best for them. And we also want to make sure that when we talk to citizens about options, this is a big focus of our strategies, we want to make sure the citizens actually have those options. So when we talk about riding a bike or walking to work or carpooling, what we in the city need to do is make sure that those options are there. We don't favor one mode over another. We don't put all our eggs in the bike basket or walk or car. The solution, and this is not just for transportation, but in a lot of other areas, energy and housing and food, is if you can provide people with a lot of options and good information, you're going to get to a better place. The problem we have in a lot of sustainability world right now is we've painted everyone into a corner where basically it's 4-bedroom single-family home on quarter-acre lot, with a car and buying things at a big conventional supermarket. And if people like that, they should have access to that. It's just that shouldn't be the only thing. That shouldn't be the only option. So that's kind of a big part of the mayor's strategy.
And that's changing a lot and rapidly.
Yes, it
in the
is.
city of Denver. I've got to cut this off. I'm really sorry that I know that there's some people who have some questions. And Jerry has said he will
stay around,
hang
yeah.
around. We'd be glad to talk with you afterwards. But right now, another member of our board, Reverend Tinianov, is going to just give some very brief closing comments.
Yes. Actually, little housekeeping kinds of things
good.
about
Yeah.
this.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you so much, Nelson. Yes, there is an evaluation, folks. It's in your packets. We ask you, is this working? Am I working?
Yeah.
Okay. We ask you, leave that for me. We ask you to fill that out and either turn it in today or mail it in to us. But we really, really would love to have this. And put them over there. Perfect, Elias. So that's one thing. And these are very brief remarks, I promise. Even though I'm a pastor, I'm not going to preach, so you're safe. I want to thank, first of all, Regis. Is Miss Brown here, Frederica? Is she here? But folks, let's thank Regis for letting us and collaborating in this, this has been an incredible location, and it has just been marvelous. The next persons I'd like to thank is our board. Larry here in the front row. Larry, raise your hand. There we go. And there is our service leader there in the back. Nelson, which is right here. Also, we had Jessica and Nicole, who were here and working so hard out there on the table and other kinds of things. They had to leave early, so, and I'm Tina. I want to, most of all, appreciate you who came today and our wonderful, wonderful speakers. And it's just the passion and the energy and the care for this is just amazing. So give yourselves a hand, folks. Thank you. We want you to stay in touch. Stay in touch with us. And the person that you need to definitely know about, where's Elias? Did he run out there? There's Elias. Elias is our man here that has made all of this happen by reaching out to all of you. And Elias, this is a miracle. So thank you, sir. You have to understand, Elias is new to this position, so making all of this happen is just amazing. So thank you. Oh, Frederica's here. Frederica, thank you, Frederica. Thank you. Thank you. And so we are very, very excited. We want you to keep in contact with us. We've had so much passion about what are we going to do next as a group, and how can we keep this wonderful momentum going. So know that we have everybody's emails, I believe, and contact information if you registered with us. And so listen and pay attention to us as we reach out to you. And hopefully we'll do some next steps really soon. We have a wonderful website, so keep up on what's happening with us there. And I have one little thing I'm going to read, but what else do we want to say here? What have I missed?
I don't know if I allowed an opportunity for this group to thank Jerry.
I think not. Let's thank Jerry.
And one more thing.
Yes, sir.
Sign up for our legislative alert network. I'll just leave this out on the table in the hallway.
Legislative, thank you, Nelson. Okay, Jerry, did I miss anything other than my little spiel at the end here?
Sounds good.
All right, yes, Eli.
A couple of folks have asked if we can share your email address. Any opinion about that? With this group.
Oh, each other. Just,
If you want to opt out, please reach me out, and then we can go from there. We can share.
yeah, okay. It's just who's in attendance. That's what she's talking about. So, yeah, thank you. Networking. There you go. That's right, sir. Now, I used to work with Native American folks, and I was blessed by all of the understanding of relationships and relatives. Everybody is all my relatives, including the buffaloes and the eagles and all of that. So I just, it's been a privilege to be here and to interact with you and to understand that you really do understand how related we truly are. Want to end with Reverend Martin Luther King greatly admired Gandhi and emulated his way of nonviolent protest. During his campaign in India, Gandhi told a gathering of students that they had reached almost the end of our resources in speech making. And it's not enough that our ears are feasted, but it is necessary that our hearts have got to be touched and our hands and feet have got to be moved. Inspiration is wonderful. Action is what is needed. So let the words that we've heard for these 2 wonderful days get inside of us and change us so that we can bring change to the world. Let us go out, empowered people, with those powerful words that we've heard for these days. Go in peace.
Amen.